Hello, and thank you for tuning in today to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain, I'm the host. Today, we're going to be talking about Provincial Disability Policy Analysis, BC versus Alberta. And, if you want to check out the podcast on your favorite app, definitely there's lots of options to choose from, all the way from Apple, iTunes Music, or, on the iTunes stuff. That definitely is there. Spotify, you name it, do a search on Google, you'll find the show. I definitely encourage you to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and stay up to date on all the current issues that are happening for Canadians with disabilities across Canada. We also definitely from time to time get guests from outside of Canada that do come on the show. So I really encourage everyone to tune in. And disability affects everybody in Canada. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't stop at 65, federal government, just to let you know. So that kind of goes into like the Canada Disability Benefit, right? So when you're establishing that, you need to include seniors. So with that being said, I want to welcome my weekly panel to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And we'll jump right into the Provincial Disability Policy Analysis, BC versus Alberta. And next week is going to be BC versus Ontario.
Yeah, well, what we should say too is this was Minnie St. Clair's idea, actually. She was on, the last few episodes, and she had this idea of doing a deep dive into policy, but she can't come on this week. She'll come on next week. So I kind of thought, well, today we can focus primarily on BC policy, and then next week we'll focus on ODSP.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and there's definitely lots to break down on policies. Policies, as we talk about is the pink unicorn here, and policies. So we'll talk more into depth regarding policies versus pink unicorns.
Yeah, and there was a reason. If you recall the last 4 shows we did, it was Disability for Dummies, right? And so this is kind of an offshoot of that, because there's a reason why we started the show. The very first statement was, what was it? It was talking about the moral compass check, right? It was talking about moral compass check, and that was the first statement, was moral compass check. People with disabilities are well taken care of, true or false kind of thing, right? and then the last statement, the 15th one, was about pink unicorns, and there was a reason why we kind of bookended like that, because now that we're going to do a deep dive, we can see how this kind of
how deep the rabbit holes.
Well, yeah,
pretty much.
How many pink unicorns are there in the policy as it's written, and how morally corrupt the policy actually is. And it's actually interesting. Like I hadn't actually taken a good look at the policy in BC, or I hadn't taken a good look at it for quite a few years. And I went through line by line, and I was kind of shocked. And there's a part where you can actually go through and kind of do a time capsule look at the policy and see how it changed over time, and what was added over time. And it's really interesting actually to see kind of how everything kind of has evolved over time.
Well, when you
I don't know
brought
if
that
it's
to
in
my
the,
attention on that, Neil, and it just blew my mind when
Yeah.
what was actually in there is there's no content.
No, I mean it's. Go ahead, Dylan.
I noticed that one thing interesting. I don't know if it's a nuance, but I see it a lot on social media. Permanent TikTok, I guess, which should give an indicator on how reliable it is. But a lot of people do these anti-digital ID videos where they're like, "You think it's bad now? Wait till the digital ID is brought down from the federal level to the municipal level to the provincial level, and if you don't have the ID." You can't shop online and stuff. And I thought, well, if there is an ID, what the hell are we going to do to stop it anyway?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, let's
See,
really be
but
specific. If the federals create a digital ID where you need it to go to the grocery store, you need it to shop online, and you need it to do banking and sign into your social media, who's really going to stop them from doing it? I mean, Doug Ford's already planning to put a parking lot underneath Ontario Place, and there's probably not much anybody from Ontario can do much about it.
The
So,
big paradise, put up a parking lot.
this goes back to the conversation we were having before the show.
but my point
Yeah.
is, like, if the federals create a digital ID where you have to have the digital ID to pretty much do anything but make your own breakfast, and even that, I wonder, can the country do much about it anyway to oppose it?
Well,
Like,
I mean,
like,
yes, legally.
Go ahead, MJ. Go ahead.
Legally, here's the thing: is if it creates any form of disparity between people, it could be deemed illegal, right? See, the problem is when the government creates all these different laws, they have to go and follow a set of code of rules and ethics. They can't just arbitrarily be put in to where they are, causing, creating a hierarchy or creating a group of preference or whatever. It has to go and create a preference. You cannot have a preference. Everyone has to be created equal. And this is where, when you take a look at these laws, it goes back to something Neil said before. If the government screws you equally, then it's not discrimination.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Right. So
this
this is where
my only I think the only thing I have against the digital ID, because I know pretty much the entire world is going to end up crossing into this. I'm not in favor of the 15-minute cities,
oh, come on.
because if you have someone that you're in a relationship with, where you just started, or they have to be half an hour from you because they work in a certain industry, and the commute
No.
is so, but
There'll be
that
no commute in 15-minute cities. See, it takes you 15 minutes to be able to walk from one side to the other. And that's what's called a 15-minute city is, right? It's about your 15-minute walk. If you can walk that far in 15 minutes, that's as big as the city's going to be. Or it could be as 15 minutes if you can drive at X amount of kilometers an hour, right? The design of this is to go and keep people controlled and contained, right? Between this, the digital currency, the digital ID, and the social credit score that actually people forget, we already have a credit score, which is a financial credit score, right? Now, if all they have to do is like go and say, oh, you're paying rent, well, you need to report your rent into the credit system. Oh, we're also going to include your social media profiles as well into this, right? We're already in the tub here, right?
Yeah.
We're already in the boiling water with a financial credit score. So they've already got us hooked. This is the problem that a lot of people don't understand, is all of this is controlled. But getting back to the topic at hand, if we could get back to that, with these rules and regulations, I did take a look at the one you gave me. I can't remember where it is here, and it's just the entire laws that you read are just nonsensical gibberish, without any relation to actually going and saying they intend to do and how they intend to go make people's lives better. They don't.
The
It's
act itself, has got nothing in it except
Yes.
for thou shalt not statements. Like,
Yeah, it's empty.
you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, try not to be a criminal, you know, type of statements, right? And so actually what I wanted to do was I wanted to start with a little video, a little show and tell presentation, because like I
Get your
know
popcorn out, people.
I know like you and I, Brent, we've talked about the origin of all these clawbacks in BC, at least started about 1993, 94 with Mike Harcourt, NDP Premier Mike Harcourt, and he had that famous or infamous news broadcast where he stood in front of a bunch of cameras. One time he said, "Everybody on welfare is cheats, varmints, and deadbeats. Cheats, varmints, and deadbeats." And that was 30 years ago. And if you look closely at the act and the legislation, you will see echoes of that. There's really serious echoes throughout that act and throughout the legislation of cheats, varmints, and deadbeats.
Wow.
Repeated, like not the actual words, not the actual words, but all that. It's kind of structured that way of like everybody on PWD assistance is a cheat, varmint, and deadbeat, and therefore that's what you deserve.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're talking about ableist policy that's become a stigma in the years to follow. It's like a stain or a smell or something that nobody can see, but everybody knows is. I say that ableism is a social disease, and it's far more lethal than any virus that. Because a virus can be cured, we can get a vaccine for a virus, whether it's TB or whatever, you know, COVID, whatever.
Yes, but you know,
trying to kill some viruses can't be cured because there's a narrative and an ideology behind them. And what Neil just mentioned, especially coming from a very socialist person, was an NDP guy, right?
Yeah.
That's scary, because when you got an NDP guy basically putting down people who are on assistance as being varmints, deadbeats, and lowlives, that stigma will last for the next 50 years, because anybody who's on the right end of the spectrum can go, even the socialists think they're deadbeats.
Definitely a good look for sure. And we're gonna dive right into these.
Anyway, let's start the video presentation. Actually, there's two videos. We'll start with David Eby.
Okay.
So I've turned control over to MJ, and so we're gonna see a video of David Eby talking about we'll see what he's talking about. He basically talks about CEOs being power hungry, and like he was talking about the canceling of the radio stations here in BC.
Right.
Bell Canada just axed a whole bunch of jobs and radio stations.
Yeah.
So that's the context.
See, I haven't watched it, but I'm going to watch it afterwards. Okay. It says screen sharing is currently disabled.
Oh, let me. I thought I put. I thought I allowed it.
I can fire up OBS and go and play it through my camera and switch myself out.
No, just give me a second. I thought it was enabled. 1 second. Give me 1 sec. Oh yeah, here. Now I've enabled it. So there you go.
I can share that to anybody if they're interested.
Okay, screen sharing. Okay. Share sound. Optimize for video clip. Sorry, folks. It's been a while since I've done this.
Here we go. Here we go,
This is
everyone.
this is why you're doing it, the MJ, not me.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not total tech savvy.
Okay, gentlemen. Let's let this go.
Just before we get
Just
into
turn it up a
questions
bit louder, maybe.
related topic.
Stop it and put it up a bit louder.
Are you not getting the audio?
It's a little bit quiet. Just try to
Just a
crank
sec.
the audio if you can.
I'm sharing the sound.
Okay. I don't know if you can turn up the sound as louder or not. Turn it up a bit louder, maybe. Stop it and
Just before we get into questions on an unrelated topic.
Okay, I'm getting feedback here.
yeah,
Guys, if you could.
yeah, maybe not. Don't play back anything.
Otherwise, mute yourself for a sec.
It might come across better maybe on Brent's phone. It sounds very quiet.
I heard today about the catastrophic layoffs of journalists, media workers by Bell.
Is that better?
Sale of
No, now the screen is blank. There's no screen now. Why don't you
assembly of
oh, there we
local
go.
media assets.
Now the sound was better at the end there, but we had no right at the end the sound was better. But we can't hear you now.
Your microphone's off.
Your microphone's off, just so you know. Okay. Technology's fun.
Okay, let's try this again.
Promise that it's worth it, though. Promise that it's
Get your popcorn over.
And we have the screen is blank
Just
again.
before
there we go.
we get into questions on an unrelated topic, I heard today about the catastrophic layoffs of journalists, media workers across the province by Bell, the sale of dozens of radio stations. Bell and corporations like Bell have overseen the assembly of local media assets that are treasures to local communities. They bought them up like corporate vampires. They sucked the life out of them, laying off journalists. They have overseen the encrapification of local news by laying off journalists. And now they say, you know, it's no longer economically viable to run these local radio stations. It's no longer economically viable to have investigative news. And they were allowed to do this. The impact on communities in British Columbia of their unrestrained corporate greed, they made almost $3 billion last year, is profound. The fact that they cannot find it possible with all of their MBAs to operate a few local news stations in British Columbia to ensure that people get accurate, impartial, reliable information in an age of disinformation and social media craziness is such an abandonment of any idea of corporate responsibility. I find it reprehensible. I think it's appalling. And Bell and other companies like Bell that have done this need to be held accountable for the information atmosphere that we find ourselves in today. On behalf of all of the families of the journalists, the media outlets, on behalf of all British Columbians that have watched their local news stations slowly turned to garbage by these companies who now say, unsurprisingly, that there's not a lot of support for them. I just want to say shame on you. Shame on you. And I call on the federal government to stop this assembly of media properties that are not actually properties to the local communities they serve. They are an indispensable source of information. Thank you.
Okay, so that was show and tell number 1. right?
We had Trudeau.
Yeah.
We had Trudeau the other day on
And-
social media saying how annoyed and disgusting he was.
Yeah, and I should say, like,
Right.
we're not throwing David Eby under the bus here. I actually applaud him for his strong stance.
Mhm.
You know, it had to be said. I mean, it is disgusting, right?
It is.
But I mean, the problem, the one problem I do have with it though is that you can't. I mean, that was very strong language. You can't say stuff like that in a vacuum, right? Because like when he was saying those strong, like let's go over some of the words he used here. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
use the words catastrophic, vampires, encrapification. Oh, I love that word, encrapification.
Crapification, yes.
Corporate responsibility, no longer economically viable, reprehensible, appalling, need to be held accountable, and shame on you. Those are all the words he used, and I can't help but think all those words he used are the same things like we could say about the PWD social assistance system, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
PWD social assistance system here in BC, it's catastrophic. It's
Mhm.
it's
It takes lives.
it's loaded with vampires. It's encrapification of the disabled. Encrapification of the disabled. It's a lack of corporate responsibility. It's saying that the disabled are no longer economically viable.
Right. And then
what-
there, in other words that they used to use at the offices, which they still do, I'm sure. They would say, you live within your means. Live within your means. Say, budget better.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
So-
well, that's gaslighting.
So
Yeah.
I mean,
That's straight gaslighting.
you know, David Eby says, you know, shame on you, and it's true. Shame on you, Bell. But we could also say shame on them, all the provinces for the last 30 years
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
entrapping people with disabilities in legislated poverty on purpose.
Mhm. Exactly.
Purposefully done. You know,
Mhm.
so just like Bell laid off, you know, canceled like thousands of jobs on purpose. You know,
Mhm.
our provincial governments have been doing this on purpose for 30 years.
Well, yeah, and
Well,
economically, I mean, it has a whole ripple effect across all of our beautiful country. I mean, it's you know, all the jobs just completely shredded. I mean, gone, just poof,
Well,
just like that. Like a
think
big
about it. I
unicorn.
mean, like, how long before the colleges stop offering journalism programs because they're like, it's those programs are very expensive to run, like radio TV, which is another one that could be on the chopping block for colleges where they're going, well, what's the point of running a journalism program or a broadcasting program if there are no jobs out there because there are no more radio stations because these corporations have basically stuck a spear in them and
Well,
drain
what
them,
happened?
right?
Yeah,
You
go
know what
ahead,
happened? You know what happened was when the government said, "Oh, because there used to be restrictions." Okay, there used to be restrictions that said you could only own so many businesses of the same type in the market, right? For example, with radio stations, you could only own two radio stations as long as they had different formats and weren't competing with one of the other, you know, formats or some stupid thing. They tried to keep the diversity in the marketplace. But when they started clawing back all these restrictions, and then they let these corporations just start gobbling up these things like hyenas, you know, what
Internet,
happened?
cell phones, yeah,
Well, no, I mean, I'm talking about just the radio stations and the television stations,
yeah.
right? But does anyone remember ITV out of what was it, Edmonton?
Yeah.
Remember them? Yeah, they got bought up by who? Global or CTV, right? You know,
Mhm.
they're gone. They were a great TV station. They had great broadcasts. They had great information. They
Mhm.
provided a lot of information, like Check TV. You know,
Mhm.
they got bought up. Then they ended up going back out on their own because they were going to shut them down.
Mhm.
Right?
WNDT
Yeah,
out of
exactly.
Buffalo, I think.
Yeah, Czech TV is the only privately owned TV station. Yeah, I mean, and they're great, right? They broadcast
I
live.
think TVO's bought up.
Well, can I jump in? You know, what my point being is with Czech TV not having these allegiances,
Yeah.
they can be journalists, not reporters. And the reporters, all they're doing is reading the teleprompter per se and not going and actually question what's being fed to them. You know, we used to have a state of journalism where the journalists would go and find the scoop and break the story wide open, right? All of a sudden, boom, we had the big story. I mean, we used to have this type of journalism, right? And now when you hear about people about what the hell's his name down in the States there? I can't remember what his name is. That guerrilla journalist guy. I mean, trying to go and do investigative journalists and others trying to go and do investigative journalists, right? Going and trying to find out what's going on with this corruption. And they're getting berated by the mainstream journalisms as idiots and nutcases and whatnots because they're not going and playing by their rules, by the corporate rules, right? And the problem we have is if you take a look at the corporate rules when it comes to media, well, they've fallen short. I hate to say it, they've fallen short of being quality anymore.
But I did want to bring it back and say the reason why we're sharing this. I mean, yes, it's about media and the news media being bought up or, you know, dismantled or whatever I want to say. But the reason why I shared it is the whole idea about, you know, that it can be transferred over to talking about the PWD assistance too. This whole, I mean, David Eby used the word encropification. I love that word. He's talking about the encropification of news media. Well, I mean, we've dealt with encropification of disabled people in this province for 30 years.
Well, this is the other thing,
you know,
guys, is because they corporatized all these media corporations, us little guys have a very hard time trying to get our message out, right? So we try, you know, we're trying to go and talk about the things that matter and get our message out. Because these corporate medias have their timeline and how they got to do things, guess what? We're not even considered to be talked about at all. So we end up going to second-rate and third-rate news agencies that are small and tiny, trying to be a news agency, get our message out, and it gets even harder because the mainstream system has got to play their game. And this is why, you know, so when it comes back to the media, they're part of the problem, which actually causes harm to us as well.
It's true, yeah.
You know, so I'm correlating this back over to PWD, Neil. So don't worry, I'm getting there.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, like, so with the crapification, you can't get a message out like what we're talking about with PWD allies and talking about these real issues, right? So we're resorting to being, you know, we're not like on a PBS or type station where we could actually talk about these issues, right? We're stuck on the internet where we got to go and fight for viewership among billions. And try to find time. I mean, at least on these PBS type stations, we would have a chance to go and get the word out and talk about these issues in real time with real people and maybe take even calls. You know?
Well, it's frustrating for me.
Yeah, very true.
It's frustrating for me because I'm a photographer, so trying to compete as an artist in that type of, but from a disability platform, it's like you can't even speak your mind because you can only use social media platforms. So it's like you're on the dark web of getting your word out. So half the time the scammers that are scamming seniors out of hundreds of thousands of dollars using crypto scams. I'll get more ink, if you will, in the media than someone with disabilities who are starving because they can't pay rent.
And this is why I'm thinking we need to just move to India.
Well, see, part of the narrative too with the news, a lot of the channels is I've noticed they talk about seniors, families, but not people with disabilities. Like it's that narrative
where the inconvenient.
And that's what I want. That's what I wanted to get to too. But one of the things is I just wanted to share a Bible verse, and people are free to be offended if they want to be. But I just want to share a Bible verse because it points back to David Eby. And again, I'm not going to be throwing him under the bus at all because I applaud what he said. But okay, this is Jesus speaking. He says, "You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And that's Matthew 7, verse 5. And again, it's Jesus speaking. So he's talking about hypocrisy, right? And I mean, you know, again, I applaud David Eby for what he said, but there's a lot of it's a lot of hypocrisy there when you're saying that it's appalling what these CEOs are doing, and yet you're not looking at your own mess that the government is unloading on you know.
Yeah, it makes him look like a
disabled
hypocrite
community.
because it makes him look like a hypocrite because he won't take it. He'll sit on a pulpit, and I admire him for speaking out, but if
Oh,
he's
me
not
too.
going
Me
to
too.
not going to take any action against, it's the same as Trudeau coming out and saying this is divisive, and we're actually not going to do anything about it, but we'll say that we're going to do.
You know, if David Eby said, okay, fine, you want to close these down, we're going to go and make sure that community organizations can go and buy these corporations that you intend to close down so we can keep the people employed, and then further local journalism. We're going to go and make sure that this happened. If he took that extra step, I would really be thrilled, right? Because the truth is without local journalism, you sit in the dark. I mean, we used to sit there and listen to our scanners and listen to what was happening with the criminal activity in the town until they encrypted the radios, you know. So, you know, it was a source of entertainment for a lot of people. You know,
my son does that with fire departments.
Right.
Yeah, well, you know, so I mean, and this is the thing is with all this secrecy that the government keeps enacting, oh, we need to have secrecy, they need to have privacy, they need to have this. It's like we end up in a state where we've become less and less informed. The government doesn't talk about what the criminal elements is doing anymore. You know, we used to have the police blogs and, you know, in the paper of telling you know, a lot of the, you know, the criminal activity that happened. You know, they don't really go. I mean, either there's too much of it to go and talk about, which is probably part of it, or there's just, I don't know. But the media, it's like you got to sit here with all this stuff and take a look at how the media keeps running. If you go and open up a lot of these newspapers, they're all running practically the same stories.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same
Car
thing.
thefts are up.
Yeah. I'm gonna put it back to Neil for the policy stuff. I want to kind of look and see what else did you see in there, Neil, versus like with that, and then I'm gonna dive into a little bit about the Alberta stuff, you know, versus the rate stuff versus BC, and I'm gonna dive in a little bit about how the taxes stuff like that.
There's one more show and tell that we can use. We can. And this was from 7 years ago when the BC Liberals were in power.
Oh, right.
And it's got yours truly in the clip. And I'm talking about Rich Coleman.
Oh,
and
yes.
It's a clip that kind of speaks for itself. So we can run that one, and hopefully the volume on that one will be okay. But again,
for
the reason
it'd be Rich Coleman was the former MLA for the BC Liberal Party in British Columbia. Now it's the BC United Party. Just so people are wondering, well, who Rich Coleman was, and he was an MLA. I think one of his portfolios was for housing. He was the housing minister.
He was housing minister. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So I just wanted to include that, and again, the reason why we're including that is to kind of, it goes back to this whole idea of you know, everybody on welfare is a cheat, varmint, or deadbeat, you know. And Rich Coleman isn't saying those exact words, but you can hear the undertones. So if you play the clip, you can hear the undertones. And like I said, after we play the clip, we're going to actually go to the legislation or the act, and you can look and see the undertones of the cheat, varmint, and deadbeats, like 30 years of undertones in the act and in the legislation, right? So let's play the clip from Rich Coleman.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I have to find it here just a second.
Okay.
I think while we're waiting for MJ there, one of the pioneering guys.
Oh, I hear it coming down.
Oh, there we go. Oh, hello.
So again, this is me. This is my 5 minutes of fame.
Oh,
Andy Warhol, so we have to have it all.
Oh, it's not, the volume is not playing again. It's, oh yeah.
Neil Matheson is adamant he won't let the BC Liberals off the hook.
He should be embarrassed. Everybody in the whole caucus should be embarrassed by what he said.
He is Deputy Premier Rich Coleman, and the comments that have Matheson riled up came last Thursday in a debate following the throne speech.
Because we have to remember that a person on social assistance, a single person on social assistance in British Columbia gets double the annual income of a person in the third world. And we should remember that, not because we say it's right, but we should remember actually how good this country is.
He has no idea what it's like to be physically disabled. None. No idea whatsoever.
Matheson has had to rely on social assistance for help. He's also been fighting with the government because he says they've clawed back benefits paid to him following his wife's death. Coleman's comments prompting him to write a blog post calling for more sensitivity.
That's why I wrote the letter, is because it's clear that they don't care. And I just want them to care. So that's why I wrote the letter. I want them to care.
But Coleman says his comments are being taken out of context.
The parallel wasn't about welfare or social assistance. It was about how poorly Canada, in the really third world conditions, treats our First Nations on reserve, and we've got to get better at it. And there's an opportunity for success with LNG to change thousands of lives.
The NDP says Coleman's comments are not being misinterpreted.
There's no doubt about it that Minister Coleman needs to apologize to people with disabilities and people living on income assistance here in British Columbia.
Matheson says an apology from the minister would be nice, though he isn't convinced he'll get one.
You have to be accountable for the things you say. You know, it's just not right.
Nadia Stewart, Global News.
So there we go. Yeah, so now if you wouldn't mind, MJ, we can share the screen. Let's open up the act first, and we'll see how empty the actual act itself is. Not the legislation part, but we'll just open up the act part, and we'll look at that first, the act, the Disability Act, or the income assistance of the disability. And again, you're muted, MG, just so you know.
Okay, just a sec.
Okay.
It's okay. So we're looking at the Persons for Employment and Assistance for Persons with Disability Act.
Yeah.
Yes.
Regulation. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great video, by the way, Neil.
Yeah, and that was 7 years ago, or roughly, for context.
I remember watching that on TV, and yeah, it really opened up a lot of issues that the former government way back when. And I'm not doing pointing fingers, the all blame game, but it's like going forward, it's like taking, like you said, taking accountability for mistakes that a government has made and saying all it takes is I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not hard for a government to say, look, we messed up, I'm sorry, and yeah.
See, the problem with the government is they never want to apologize or admit they're wrong. I mean, this is one of the biggest things that you find with governments is they never want to admit that they're wrong, ever. If they were going to admit that they're wrong, then God help us, because then they would have to be accountable for what they said. Now, I mean, it goes back to something, it's kind of, one of those things. And I'm going to find my...
I have no doubt that the NDP knows that they did Sarah Tarmer wrong, but they'll never admit to it. They'll call it a misunderstanding and anything but we fucked up.
Well, the problem is governments don't admit they're wrong. To admit you're wrong means they have to be accountable. So that's the catch. So before we go on, I'm going to bring another image up to bring into this context of this conversation, so we kind of understand where the government comes from. And
well, it's funny too when a politician resigns forcibly. Let's look at the Speaker of the House that took the sword for burning on the the senior World War II guy that was a Nazi apparently, and it was the speaker that took. It's funny when they throw a politician under the bus. It's almost
It's
like
always
it was
it's
designed.
always the little guy that doesn't matter. But here I'm
Well,
gonna
it's
bring this
also
up.
designed.
Yeah,
I
go
think it's.
ahead.
I think it's.
If I could,
Yeah,
I
one
mean,
sec there, Ellen. 1 sec.
you know, what I have on the screen is a picture that is from a Supreme Court case from 1973. It's the Roman Corp versus Hudson's Bay Oil and Gas Co. And it basically says it is the essence of our parliamentary system of government that our elected representatives should be able to perform their duties courageously and resolutely in what they consider to be in the best interest of Canada, free from any worry of being called to account anywhere except in Parliament. Now, what does that mean? It means they're not going to give us an apology.
Yeah.
Right? Now I'm going to switch over. Has it switched over to the other screen
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
legislation?
It's good. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to scroll this as slow as I can.
So this is the actual act, right?
Yes, this is the actual act.
Let's start with we can actually start maybe I think maybe the definitions part is good because, well, actually, let's go to section 18 first. We'll do 18, 25, and 26 maybe.
18. Where are we at?
So anyone that tuning in today and watching, we're actually going through the BC Employment Disabilities Act.
18's repealed over here.
Well, maybe maybe that was, how about, maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing. I know that, try 26. I'm either talking about the act or the legislation. Try to go to, is there a 26?
Yeah, but it says for consequences if a dependent youth fails to enter comply with employment plan.
Okay. Well,
you're looking at the other plan.
Maybe I'm looking at the actual regulations part then. Instead of, I know if you scroll slowly, let's just scroll slowly and let's see. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there's so much of the act, like just to stop and scroll up a little bit. It's talking about
supplements.
Duty to report, and if you're arrested and all, like outstanding arrest warrants. That was section part 5, I think. If you scroll down, I saw that.
I swear they do this by design so that it would be so complex that the average person. I mean, my dad was a college professor, and he tried to go through the ODSP back in the 90s to see what the rules and regulations were because they were thinking of turning their bedroom into a nanny suite for me. So I had my own kitchen and whatever. And because the bedroom had its own bathroom and whatever, they could make it an apartment in itself. And he wanted to understand.
Yeah, there's Division 6 consequences for outstanding arrest warrants and things like that, right? And so again, here we're talking about cheats, varmints, and deadbeats, right? That's a reflection of that. So again, that was 30 years ago that Harcourt said that, and here it is reflected in the act. There's nothing in the act that says if you're disabled, you have rights. If you're disabled, you have autonomy. It's all about, consequences of arrest warrants and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a punitive platform.
Yeah,
from the quarter.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna scroll. Can I just scroll through this quickly? So, I mean, it's like if you take a look at all this, basically, it's like, basically they try to find, categories to put everyone in, right? And then there's groups of people that you have to go to for, to get your paperwork qualified. This the modifications for COVID, but other than that, that's irrelevant to the generalized part of the act.
Yeah.
So it's like when you sit here and read all of this, it's like the assessment for eligibility for disability assistance.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, it doesn't tell you all the nonsense you're going to have to go through to get here.
No,
Right.
and that was my point. That was my whole point, is that
Well,
there's
that was my dad's point too, Neil. He was like, he's looking at this as an administrator when he's going through the ODSP one, which we'll
right.
talk when Minnie was on, and he's going, I have to go through this kind of paperwork every day at some form or the other as a college administrator, and
Mhm.
I'm baffled. How
Yeah,
am I baffled?
There's section 26H. Can we find section 26H? I don't know if that's the act. I think it's the act. It might be there we go, 26.
No, this is.
Oh, okay. So it's
You're
actually
looking-
in the.
I'm looking in the act, not the regulations.
Okay, so why don't we actually go over to the legislation now, the actual regulations legislation, because in the legislation, it's got section 26H. It talks about, and I think it also says in the act also, it has one line somewhere somewhere in there. It's not 26, but somewhere in there it says that the minister has power to make regulations. It says that somewhere in the act, but that's the only reference to anything that's administrative about the act of what the act actually will do.
Hmm.
That's the only reference about the act actually doing anything, is that it says the minister has the power to make regulations, and that's it.
Right. But if you actually go and read this, it's may
do, yeah. May do it, yeah.
Right. May provide, requires the minister's approval. It's like,
yeah,
decision of
they
minister,
don't have to.
it's exactly. This law here is not about, may provide a security deposit, may recover the amount of security deposit, they may provide a utility deposit, they may go and do all of these things, but they don't have to. It's a level of may, but all of a sudden,
Wow.
like you go and start scrolling down, and it's like they may, you can see all of this, may provide,
yeah,
right?
Make a song on that. May.
yeah,
right? You see, it's not like the minister shall, right?
yeah.
The minister
I may do it and I may not. I may do it and I may not.
But
yeah.
But once you get past all of this and then get down to may require, but then it gets down to all of this
punitive stuff.
Yeah. It turns into you're required, right?
Yeah.
Right. You become required.
There's absolutely nothing about autonomy. There's nothing about marriage equity. It's all punitive. It's all thou shalt not. If you're arrested, you're not going to get your statement. If you fail to report, you're not going to get your check. If you report wrong, you're not going to get your check. If you leave the province, actually, it's not in the act itself. It's actually only mentioned in the legislation, but it talks about the 30 days. If you leave the province for 30 days, you're not going to get your check. So it's all very, very punitive. And again, it goes back to the whole Mike Harcourt thing of cheats, varmints, and deadbeats.
Right.
This whole spirit of this whole spirit and narrative of the act was written under the spirit of cheats, varmints, and deadbeats, and like it's hard to actually. I hope this is coming across some of this in the podcast. But if anybody goes and actually looks through the act themselves, they'll see how devoid of any substance it is. The only substance.
A lot of it's filling. It's like a lasagna.
Oh, here we go. Okay, we got one here. We're a little farther down now. I mean, how shelter costs are calculated. We were actually talking about this 6 episodes ago, I believe, about shelter. Okay.
And this is the actual legislation now, right?
Yes, this is the actual legislation.
Yeah.
So fuel for heating, fuel for cooking meals, water, hydro, garbage disposal, rental of a single line telephone, the rent for the residence. So it's like, how are they calculating all of these things at $500 a month?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody, you know,
Yeah, even back in the 90s,
Yeah,
it was I remember in Ontario,
that's very
you
interesting.
could find a one bedroom for 500, but it wasn't decent,
So there's nothing
really.
in there of stating about the rent on going forward on how much. It's very vague.
Everything's very vague. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly. It doesn't say that it's like, you know, that the minister will go and take into account the cost of living increase, minimum, you know, average rent of, you know, plus 20% or whatever that an average rent would be for people. I mean, there's nothing here. I
There's
mean,
no
sure,
substance. Yeah.
sure they have these graphs here for you know, shelter costs, but it's like 500. I mean, for 10 people, 10 people, $1,140.
You
What?
get $100 each.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, in this building where I'm, $1,750 is the going price for a one bedroom, apparently. And I just talked to the manager yesterday and I said, how much for a two bedroom? Like the new price, $2,100. And she says, and that's a bargain. I go, a bargain for who? She says,
Yeah.
well, not for people with disabilities. I go, no. I said, they give you a maximum $500 in the private sector. She goes, is that it? I go, that's it. She goes, oh, the government has to do better than that. I go,
And
well,
and
yeah.
in part two, it talks about part two, division 2. There's clause 8, 9, and 10. It talks about the requirement to apply for CPP, and it talks about the requirement to apply for CPP, and why is that? It's for the express purpose of clawing it back.
Yeah,
Once
yeah, we
you
gotta claw
apply
it back.
for it, then the provinces can claw it back. It talks about that directly in the Act, Part 2, Division 2, clause 8, 9, and 10. It talks about the requirement to apply to CPP.
Wow.
Yeah,
So you can actually, in theory, slip between the cracks of
Here it is. Let me find it.
stepping away from ODSP, for example, to CPP because you're
Yeah,
you're
must
hitting that
apply.
65 age. Oh my
must
Yeah.
apply. Yeah, must apply.
Yeah, must. Yeah.
And let's scroll up to the definitions. MJ, it
You
talks
don't-
in part 1, section 1, and section 1K. Part 1, section 1K. It talks about the definitions, and it talks about the definition of unearned income. The unearned income, section 1, or part 1, section 1, unearned
Here we
income.
are.
Okay, so there's the list of, and you have to remember that this act was revised in 2002. So
Oh, yes.
there was another act that replaced, this act in 2002 replaced an older act, right?
Right.
So
That was around the same year, Neil, that the government of the day were trying to reassess people with disabilities.
exactly, yeah, it was
Province.
Gordon Campbell in 2002
I
did
know.
did all these assessments, right?
Oh, I know.
But
because
that wasn't a witch
I
hunt.
actually had gone through that process, and my doctor was
Yeah.
livid. He says,
Yeah.
"You're still disabled, Brent. Nothing changed." I go, "Well, yeah."
Yeah. So
It failed.
Well, it's
so
like,
you can see here it lists all this unearned income, and my point is on K for unearned income. Let's look at K. Surviving spouses or orphans allowances, that's unearned
Oh.
income, so that is clawed back. And when did they add that K in there?
Yeah.
What year was that K added? And if you go into point in time regulations, there's a little tool called point in time regulations.
Time capsule.
You'll find out that it was on March 18th of 2013. So this was
under the Christie Clark
this was
government.
Christie Clark then who
Oh.
added that one clause.
Oh.
Who added that one clause that it's okay to steal from widows and orphans.
Terrible.
See-
Despicable.
see, and this is when I see all of this, because I have scrolled through this act, and I kind of chuckled with all of this stuff
Yeah.
of how they define all these things to find reasons and ways to disqualify people from being able to receive benefits. Basically, this entire act, if you really go through it and you take the time to read it, It's all about finding ways to disqualify people and
Right.
going and throwing them off the system. It's not
Yeah.
designed to go to go and help people. It's
Yeah.
like if you, I mean, you have asset limits, right? I mean,
There's nothing in the act that says we shall retroactive back any clawbacks or any money that disabled people in British Columbia are entitled to from when they were designated as a permanent person with disabilities. There's nothing in the act.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important
Shocker.
to stress that there's nothing rights-based in the act. I mean,
Right.
I know, like with the
I can add.
with the Canada Disability Benefit, you have people like Mike Maurice and you know, Benita Zarillo that are trying to add kind of rights-based statements directly into the act, right?
Yep.
If you look at this act, there's nothing rights-based anywhere in this act. It's all punitive stuff. There's nothing about respecting you know, like I said, marriage equity or autonomy.
Wow.
or anything
Right.
or anything.
right.
It
the
definitely
minister-
needs to be rewritten.
See, the whole thing of the minister may, right? Right. And this goes and gives them the ability to go and change the rules, manipulate how much money they're going to go and provide assistance for, and go and find reasons to go and deny it. Right.
Mhm.
If this document was about how the government shall provide support and assistance to people that are disabled, then there would be less nonsense. But because it's written in such a way where the minister may, and the minister may, and the minister may, or he may not, right? And he leaves that ambiguity up to go and the meanings of government workers in this system, who on any given day can go and decide whether or not it's going to be your day to go and get screwed with, right?
Another
You know-
interesting thing is if I did a word search, I did a word search on a lot of different words, but one of the word searches I did, I tried to look up the word or the phrase last resort in the legislation, and there's not one mention of last resort in the regulation or legislation. But yet, when you write to the minister and you say, like, why are you clawing back my pension? The minister letter says, because it's income of last resort.
Oh,
Like,
gee.
that's and the other thing that's always quoted too in every response letter is that the minister has power to make regulations, and the only reason they use that one clause is it's the only clause that mentions anything about doing anything administratively, like, because everything else is punitive, right?
What's scary too, Neil, is that my worker even said this. This guy I was with in Toronto when I had him as Mike, who I had to report because he was being abusive verbally. He said, it's entirely up to me whether I click stamp granted or denied on a benefit you're requesting, like employment startup. He said, I can choose whether I'm going to give that to you or not. And I was like, that doesn't seem like policy said, screw people who are trying to take advantage of the system. I'm the guy that gets it done whether you get it or not. And then he hung up on me. And I had to file a formal grievance against the social worker because he was threatening to put me on hold. And he said, he was like, I don't think you should have a child in your care. And I have my son. Like he's the drastic far extreme of punitive workers. But the point being is the fact that these workers have the ability to stamp on a policy scares me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to turn the mic over to MJ just for a moment there, and then I'm going to talk about the Alberta stuff in one sec there too. Go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
I mean, and this is why, after you read these rules and regulations and all the rest of the stuff, and you read those laws and you scratch your head and go, and try to figure out exactly what it's designed to do. And you start to realize it's literally designed to go and find reasons to throw you off. This doesn't find reasons to help you. And as I was scrolling back and forth with my finger, it's like, this is why universally available basic income is because the only answer left is to quite literally take this tyranny and just say, well, we're going to transfer your people off and you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with the employees. Because, you know, until we have a government that really wants to actually solve the problems, you know, I hate to say it, this is going to be a pipe dream. Because anything they offer us, I mean, I've seen the one version that's been offered by UBI Works, and basically it operates exactly the same as we operate right now. It's dollar for dollar, and if you earn money, you lose it, right? Which makes it even harder for people to get off the system. I mean, this is, you know, all of these ideas that I see offered are not designed in any way, shape, or form to create a benefit for people to be able to get their lives rebuilt or get their lives going or own a home, so they're not paying an absorbent amount of rent, you know. And this is where it's, you know, to me,
Gatekeeping.
well, the gatekeeping, yes. I mean, if we got rid of all of this nonsense and all of these employees, I mean, I already calculated 2 million government employees across Canada alone. I know it's a lot of people that we'd lose from government. Unfortunately, most of them are just people that work in administration, right? A good portion of them. And they're just administrators administrating, right? At least half of them are, you know. So the other half would just be ancillary people or even people that decide they're going to take their kids out of public school and put them into a private school. And that would further cause government workers to be downsized. I mean, the problem we have here is we've created a system where we have a government that wants to take more and more control instead of giving control back to people to make the decisions for themselves. And this is what I've envisioned with universally available basic income, is giving you the free choice. If you need to go and spend $1,000 on glasses once every couple of years, you'll have the money to do it. If you need to go and get a wheelchair instead of half a wheelchair, you know, you could be able to afford it, right? I mean, this is where solving problems seems to be out of grasp in the intelligentsia of the people that we have in elected office.
Well, and this is where I wanted to speak on being a parent as well. Like, you know, like a big responsibility about being a parent is, you know, making sure that your kids grow up to be good humans, you know, like, you know, basically my job as a parent is to make sure that my son doesn't grow up to be a jerk, more or less, right? More or less, like, don't be a jerk, right? And yet we have governments that are not being good humans and being jerks. You know, like it's like, can you imagine? I mean, we all know, again, and not to pick on David Eby, but can you imagine, like, here's David Eby, a lawyer, and he was, like, you know, he was the attorney general, and that's a guy that's in charge of the human rights complaint system and tribunals and that. And can you imagine him saying, "Hi, I'm David Eby, and, you know, the truth doesn't matter, you know, and it's okay to lie, it's okay to cheat, it's okay to steal money from widows and orphans."
You know,
well, you know, and the other thing too, Neil, is like when people apply for provincial disability, it doesn't matter what province they're in, under that designation as a person with permanent disabilities. So the doctor makes you go through all the paperwork and signs off and makes you go through all the diagnostic testing. They, you know, and at the end of the day, it's the government who then will look through the medical examiners will now look through and make that determination. However, it's the doctor who knows the patient and knows, do you qualify? You don't just say, well, you know, hey, I want to have disability, so I could be well taken care of. The doctors are basically, you know, assuming that the government's going to take care of their citizens because they have a legal responsibility to take care of their citizens. And when they don't,
it's mandated,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
They're
exactly.
mandated to do it.
Yeah, and that's what my doctor was so livid, because he says they're supposed to take care of their citizens, not suppress them into legislated poverty.
Yeah.
And he says, and that's exactly what they're doing. And so you're right, MJ. There needs to be some kind of either a UABI, some kind of guaranteed income like is going to take care of the citizens. I mean, look at the seniors. I'm going to pull up a clip while we're doing the podcast. There was something in the Parliament from Mike Maurice. Unless you can pull it up, MJ. There was a recent one from Mike Maurice that was just talking about people with disabilities, and there was a minister who basically proclaims that the system's taking care of seniors and would not mention the persons with disabilities. Not one word about persons with disabilities.
Well,
one of the things I wanted to mention too is I pulled up a little PDF from the BC Human Rights Tribunal page, or might be from the commissioner's office actually. The Human Rights Commissioner. But on this PDF, it says, "How do I know if I have a human rights complaint?" Okay, that's the title of the question. How do I know if I have a human rights complaint? To make a complaint under the Human Rights Code, all of the following must be true. Okay, the first thing is you have been treated badly or denied a benefit. I'll repeat that. You have been treated badly or denied a benefit. That's point number one. And the point number two is there's a connection between the way you've been treated badly or denied a benefit and a personal characteristic, i.e. The disability characteristic, such as race, color, religious belief, gender, mental or physical disability, or sexual orientation. And the treatment in this situation such as occurred at work, in a store or restaurant, or between a landlord and tenant. And so when you're saying that the government is doing this, then it's almost like they have an out, because it's like they're like, well, it didn't happen in a store, or and they can they can say, well, like I've said before, I mean, this is something that the Human Rights Tribunal chair told me. It's not something that I'm saying. It's something that the chair told me.
Yeah,
he says he said that, well, as long as the government is discriminating, well, he didn't use the word discrimination because he doesn't want to use the word discrimination, but he basically said as long as government's treating you the same as they're treating like an old woman or something. Yeah, it's not discrimination anymore.
That's why unicorn comes into effect.
And but I mean, like if you look at what it says, how do I know if I've got a human rights complaint? It says that you've been treated badly or denied a benefit. So I've been denied my my survivor's pension. That's number one. And why am I on PWD social assistance in the first place? It's because I have a disability, right? You're enrolled in social assistance too, Brent, because you have a medically assessed disability. We all have medically assessed disabilities. That is why we're on the system. Yeah. And so it's almost like now that you're on the system, we have a no holds barred ability to abuse the shit out of you.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And you better not call it discrimination. This shit treatment. You better not call it discrimination.
Yeah.
I'm baffled by
one quick sec. I just wanted to mention to MJ. MJ, I sent you some DM over to your X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. There's some video clips. So there was one of the Trudeau one, kind of what we were talking about, EB of the video clip. And there was one from, well, you'll see it. Maybe if you could somehow screenshot it, if you can.
Okay.
Yeah. And while you're working on that, MJ, go ahead, Alan. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was trying to remember what I was saying. I lost my track of thought. The whole system is so banally crazy that I don't know how. It baffles me. That's what I was trying to say. It baffles me that the government isn't vetting their social service workers, because when you have a worker that's basically saying, in my opinion, I can be completely shitty to you and there's no accountability towards that. and they can say pretty much anything, and it's your word against theirs. So unless you record the
Well-
conversation when you report them, they can pretty much put.
Well, they
you
say
said,
that
"I s-
they always say that the
But-
call is being recorded for quality and training purposes. So, you
Yeah, right.
like he said to me, he goes, in my opinion, I should put your check on hold just because I think you're taking advantage of the system right now, and there's nothing you can do about it."
Well, you see,
And
that's a bully. That's being a
so
bullying tactic.
that's what I'm saying. So it
right. And
baffles
this
me
is
that they can get away with a worker can be a completely shitty worker
Right, but they can
to
also
a client, and there's no accountability unless you're someone like myself or Brent or like you or Miss Minnie that knows the system and can say call them out on it. The majority of people on disability that have really like maybe severe autism or ADHD, or they have a really high learning disability cognitively, they can just go, okay, please, and they'll sit there literally begging for their lives not to be put on hold. And
Yeah.
it just all it does is embolden the bully to saying, I can do this to every client I have.
See, this is the thing is. This is why, if you get these type of people that start threatening you, you just ask, is this call being recorded? Yes. You hang up, you call back the switchboard and say, I need to speak to a supervisor. And then you tell them that the call, right, with the call I'm on with such and such was becoming verbally abusive and threatening. And you say, I need you to please review this call and call me back when you're done. Because right now I'm very upset and I need time to calm down. Call me in an hour. Right? That way it gives them enough time to deal with it, because sometimes a supervisor can and will throw somebody out of the office for things like that. Right? Because if they're doing it just to you, they're going to start taking a look at the rest of their calls very quickly.
Well,
Right?
I remember a situation where I was moving from a point A to point B. I was on Vancouver Island at the time many years ago, and I was looking at housing, and it was a little bit more expensive for sure, but it was I thought it was better environment, but it anyway, whatever. It was still a home, right? Roof over our head. So the basically to get to the point of the story is the worker said, well, you'll put yourself into a financial emergency situation where if you apply for emergency assistance or any kind of extra help, a supplementary help, we will deny you automatically because you deliberately put yourself into harm's way. I go, that is my decision to make. And I said, I will make that decision based on what is best for me. Well, there's a place that's cheaper. I go, there's nowhere cheaper. You can't rent any BC for $375.
Why can't you find any place to rent for $500? Brent, you should be able to.
I found a place for $650. I said $650, and I looked it up and I said, "Where's that?" Oh, I saw it for Craigslist. I said, "Oh my gosh!" I looked up the address. The place is all boarded up, and there was a lot of drug dealers coming and going from there. And the reason why I know that is a friend of mine's friend actually was looking for a place to basically rent, and he said, no, stay away from that place. He wouldn't even go there. He actually crashed out in his own car. He actually had stayed with us for a couple of weeks because until we could find somewhere else. And he said, well, what is wrong with the government? I mean, that would be subjecting a person to a very not a very good environment. Of course, the government says, well, you're being too picky and choosy, Brent. I go, picky and choosy? I'm sorry, I have dignity and respect for myself. And
It's
also
like not to be shot in my own house.
Yeah,
Thanks.
exactly. And so I said, I told her, I said, I find you very disrespectful, right? And the call was being recorded in Montreal. I said, I find you very disrespectful. And I said, my mother always said, command respect for yourself, Brent. Stand up for what you believe in. And so I actually marched into the office and I demanded them to contact it. And all the lady said was, I'm sorry. That was the response. Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
sorry.
I want to look at the difference between like Thailand. I know like we're BC versus Alberta. I don't have a lot of the stats maybe if when people are watching the podcast later, if they want to dive into like we can maybe touch base on.
Well, I was hoping that Cassandra was going to be on. If she was on, she would be able to shed more light on that. But.
Yeah, I mean, I can just talk quickly
Sorry,
about.
I was reviewing the videos that you sent me.
Yeah,
I was just reviewing the videos. Now, I honestly, the political rhetoric in the House of Commons is mostly just political rhetoric, right? It's not actually solving problem. It's theater. A lot of it's theater, right? I mean, especially question period, that's theater. I mean, anything outside of question period, there might be real questions to be real answers, but for most part, when inside a question period, where they're jumping back and forth and they're doing their quips, everybody knows what everybody's going to say, right? Because it's well organized. Because, how can you go and have the prime minister make his quip, sit down, the opposition leaders jumping up right away to go and jump in there, unless this is well organized soliloquy of and a dance going back and forth.
Yeah.
So this is theater.
I know what you're going to say next. Really? Oh, okay.
Yes,
what?
So I mean,
maybe you guys talked about this in lunch half an hour earlier.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's like every question period, from what I've learned, every question period, the night before, the questions that are going to be asked of the prime minister and everyone else are all organized back and forth. Everyone knows who's got questions, and then they prepare the answers for the next day, right? Then I don't know if the responses are shared or not, but it almost seems like when you sit here and watch question period, that it's like the dance that goes on is question, quick answer, rebuttal question, quick answer, and it's like you sit here,
it's like flipping through pages, going, hang on.
It's
like
I
know what they're going to say.
It's like an action. It's like a film, or a theater production that's being, well choreographed, and.
Yeah, I agree with MJ. I almost think of the fact that I can almost picture Pierre and Trudeau and a bunch of the Liberals and a bunch of Conservatives at the Mandarin the night before when they booked a banquet hall and they're having an all-you-can-eat. The night before, kind of comparing notes. Like, I think we should fight over this. Well, let's fight over that.
Well, if you think for a minute, it's like when you really look at this current situation in Canada. None of these people at the highest levels of government ever take an oath to represent the people, right? They take an oath to the crown, whether they're the opposition party or they're not the opposition party. They take the same oath, so they work under the same system, right? And a lot of this is theater. So, so to me, it begs the question: what's the answer, right? What's the answer to do?
UBI.
Well, exactly. It's like universally available basic income is one of the better answers. It's not the best answer. People lose their jobs as a result, and I understand how this, will cause problems for people. But at the same time, for people that we go, if we end up in a situation,
we can't really see the numbers, Brent. But I know that's a map of the numbers.
I'm actually going to.
What I wanted to,
Brent, is that from Twitter?
Yeah.
Can you drop it in my DMs and I can share it on the screen if you want?
What I wanted to get back to, Brent, actually is earlier in the podcast, you had mentioned that, there's not a lot of people talking about disability discrimination. And I agree. Like people talk about all kinds of other discrimination and not to minimize them. Like, for example, and we've talked about this before too, remember when COVID hit and we had Sophie Louis, who was a global BC news personality.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
And she's great. She's great. And she made the comment on Twitter back when I was on Twitter. I saw it. And she made the comment on Twitter back when there was a big spike in racial hatred, right? When COVID hit, because everybody's blaming China. So everybody that was Asian, they're like, and it was all this hatred like spewing everywhere. And even our human rights commissioner, BC Human Rights Commissioner, they did a huge study on it Like
Mm.
we must study this racial hatred that's going on, and I mean that's valid, that's true, but the point I want to make, and I know that racial discrimination and disability discrimination are different. I mean, I wish Minnie was here. I mean, she could speak to the racial discrimination
Yes.
because
Yeah.
she knows, she has experience with that. But I did want to make the point that when Sophie Louis said, "I feel like I'm being othered," I just want to make that point, is when she said, "I feel like I'm being othered" about this racial hatred. Like as soon as she said the word othered, it's like bingo. Like I as a disabled person feel the exact same thing. I feel othered. You know, that the government can disrespect me and say I have no autonomy, I have no right to a pension, but yet somebody that works 4 hours at McDonald's, we're going to call that an earned income, but yet a protected pension, you know, a guaranteed protected pension, we're just going to turn that into pink unicorn, and that doesn't, you know,
Right.
so some single guy that doesn't have a kid, some single guy on PWD working at McDonald's gets the income exemption, and
Right.
somebody that just lost their wife through death, you know, it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's
gets it
too bad.
claw-
That's
gets
too
the
bad for
claw-
you. We're going to claw that back.
Yeah.
See, and this is where, see, and this is why I like, my idea is no discrimination. Period.
Totally.
Oh, no,
You're a
yeah, I agree.
You're a Canadian citizen that lives in Canada. You know, there you go.
Mhm.
You're entitled, right, to be able to use this program if you need it. You know, if you
Mhm.
don't need it, you're still going to go and pay income tax on it, right?
Mhm.
And the problem we have is we're living in a system where everything has turned into the administrative bureaucracy, and
Totally.
it's almost reminds me of, I just recently watched V for Vendetta, but it was reminding me of the other movie. What the hell is it called?
What's that, Ellen? Is it a robot?
It's one of the new cleaning AI robots that
Yes.
Walmart's bringing in.
Exactly.
And
So there's more jobs that are going away. I mean,
Yep,
people
yep.
have to realize that UABI is something that we're going to have to be hitting the corporations for. See, for every time they automate a job and take a job out, they should pay a flat fee per year into the UABI fund. This is going to be the only way to solve this problem. I mean,
Yeah.
like it or not, I mean, the corporations are going to have to pay. I'm going to skip what I was saying before, but going back to this is, the system is gotten itself to be overbloated with the administration, and we have AI coming out. Are we really going to need a complex CRA and a tax system to go make things even more interesting? No, we don't. Right? Let's simplify it, return it over to computers, and if you really need to speak to a human, your likelihood of being audited, by the way, is going to be pretty slim. Because you'll be told exactly, how much money you should be paying. Plus, with my idea of fixing the income tax system and allowing people to move and opt out of the old system into a new system would simplify things even further. I mean, the problem.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The problem is it goes back to this idea that we have is we grew up with this whole idea of being an individual, an individuality, and go pull up your bootstraps, son. Get on your crutches, Neil, and get out there and get to work.
And I did. I did,
right?
though.
Yeah, I know.
I did do that.
Right? This is what and it's like, well, still do it anyways. You're in a wheelchair, you can still go. Right?
Yeah.
It's like they don't. It's like until you're sitting here lying here on your deathbed going, I can't do it anymore. Then they will go, oh, we'll help you, but we'll help you die. Right?
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
what they're doing.
or they'll lift you up and they'll say, you know what? Come on, get out of bed. Come on, let's get going.
Well,
Yeah.
it's we've got this system that doesn't care.
I know.
And
So cruel.
and to me, I think the only way through is creating a system that does care and shows it cares to help people get their lives going. You know, let's stop sending out kids out into the world that are, you know, end up with $200,000 in debt, right? You know, from trying to go to school. You know, this system is designed to keep you in financial slavery for your entire life. This is why they call it a mortgage. It's a death trap, is really what it is, you know, and they do all of this sleight of hand and all this trickery, and everyone has been trained to buy into this and believe it.
But that's that's another very small point I want to make, MJ, is that you know, the government says you know, go and get a job, and I did, and so did my first wife. She was a school teacher for the elementary school system for 17 years. So she was, I mean, I was talking about making kids good humans. So she was responsible for making kids good humans for 17 years, right? And before she got that job, she had to take what was 5 years of schooling, right? And of course, you have to pay for the 5 years of schooling, and then you get interviewed for the job, and then you get a good union job. So then you get union benefits, right? And part of the union benefits is to get pensions and stuff like that. But see what the government says is they'll say, well, sure you worked, and sure your wife, you know, she paid for her training, and she found a good union job and all the rest of it, and she paid into the pension, and her employer paid into the pension. But who cares? We're gonna disrespect that, and you know, if you go on EI and you're not,
we're gonna cut you off.
We're gonna cut that off too, because you don't deserve that either. Or if you get injured on the job and have to apply for WCB, we're gonna claw that back too, because you don't deserve the benefits of working. We want you to work. We want you to work, but we don't want you to enjoy the benefits of working, right?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. I mean, because you look at like basically what I was saying earlier is that you look at Alberta's rates for like PWD, you look at BC's rates. Now it's all based on because of taxation. I know when we had a former minister on the show and had dived into the reasons why is Alberta's rate higher than BC? Why is BC's higher than Ontario? You know, and because it's all taxation, but the cost of living is still high. But it's about suppressing people down and saying, well, yeah, you want that rate? Well, hey, I'm fine. Move to Alberta. But you know what? Like Cassandra would have dived into it today, because she would have been like, well, hang on. It's not always as rosy as you think it is, because some of the criteria that supplements that you need are not all covered under Alberta versus BC does. So there's like apples, oranges, right? It's like, you know, it's sure the rates may seem 1685
lemons.
Right, yeah, but I mean, you look at 1685, right? You think, oh wow, that's higher. Well, look at Northwest Territories. I mean, theirs are even like well over, but the cost of living is very high. You got to truck in all the stuff. The cost of living in Alberta, I mean, the housing, it's going right to the roof. Their rates are not even meeting the basic accommodation rates. I mean, BC, no, it's laughing stock, because your housing, like I said earlier on the podcast, $1,750. That's just where I live. I mean, and there's other places that are even higher than that, over 2,000. I mean, my gosh, and a PWD, $500. That's only to selective selective PWD. Not everybody got that 125 last year. What's in this year's budget for BC? Well, you know what? I don't think there's going to be. And I mean, people are going to say, Brent, how could you say that? I don't think the government loves to skip a year, go a year. Hey, we gave 125 last year. This year, you know what? We got more to do. We'll go next year. You know, but there's more to do, right? There's more to do. I think that's that theme, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm really, and I know Jeff Leggett and you know, a whole bunch of us, we've been pushing to get these rates at a set target, get them up to a standard.
When John Horgan used to say, "We've got your back," I love the guy. I did. He was one of our best premiers. He honestly was.
He was.
But it annoyed me when he would say, "We got your back," because, here I am getting my pension claw back, and I'm thinking to myself, "Well, you mean you got your knife? You got a knife stuck in my back, right? That's what you mean by you got my back. You got a knife stick in there."
Neil,
Well, yeah. Well,
right,
here's a good point,
Here,
though,
I'll
Neil.
I'll give it to you with the Russian accent. Don't worry, we have your back.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's a good
Good
point
one,
that
yeah,
my
you're back.
manager made a good point to me yesterday was they go a year and they skip a year. Well, you get a rent increase every year. I go, right. Okay, so why are they not giving an increase every year? I mean, that's just for rent. I mean, are they just going to give just an increase just for rent? I mean, what
It
about
should be
cost
tied
of
to
living?
inflation. It should be
Yeah,
tied to
like she said,
inflation
the rate should have
every
been
year.
tied to inflation, and you should be having enough for your housing. Like there should not be housing. Yeah.
See, here's the thing: is anytime I talked about this idea of universally available basic income, everyone gets confused, and I said, "Well, they're like, well, that's what are you talking about?" And it's like the idea is the available part. It's not the mandatory part. If you don't want the money, you don't have to take it. But if you do need the money, it's there for you to take.
Exactly.
Right. And if you get employed, you get yourself a job and you get yourself going, and you get yourself through school, and all of a sudden now you're making $150,000 a year job. You don't need this anymore. You can go and unsubscribe. Not a
But they have
problem.
the rent bank though, MJ. They have apparently BC has a rent bank. Well, if you're on provincial disability and you go to a rent bank because you don't have enough money for the high rent, how's a person going to pay it back?
Well,
That's where I
exactly.
guess
See, this is where it's like they set this system up so that you're always having enforced indentured servitude to go and pay off this amount of money at $20 a month, or this amount of money at $20 a month. They've got this set up in such a way that you can't go and get ahead. You can't go and say, I mean, if I, as a single person, I can't own no more than $100,000 in assets. Okay, you know that the average fifth wheel is over $100,000 if I were to live in a fifth wheel. Okay,
East,
if I were to live into an RV, we're talking about $200,000, right? I mean, this is the problem that they have with this Neolithic legislation that is so caught in medieval thinking that they, exactly, so archaic that they don't, when they designed it back in 2002,
or maybe back in the 1800s.
And updating the original
Sheets, Varmints, and Deadbeats back in 1993.
Right. And then before that, the previous legislation in 93, and before that, it's all premised on the same ideology of we're going to give you just enough so you have enough to complain about, but not enough to go and, do something about it. Right. They put you in between that rock and a hard place. And so the moment you start going and raising a fuss, they're going to start looking at you. This is, so what?
Well, that, yeah.
So this is where the problem is we don't need this type of abusive behavior coming from our government towards its citizens. And this is where, we were talking before the program. I don't know. Can I bring this up, Neil, or should I not?
You can bring it up. We don't have to share the screenshot, but we can, because what we were talking about actually was a couple days ago even. Like my son Jake, he's 15 years old now, and he's very aware of my clawback of the pension, right? Because like whenever I would type letters to or emails to the government, and like my son would say, "Oh, I can tell you're writing emails," because like I'd be like kind of angry, right? He's like, "You've been writing emails again, haven't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." But the other day, he's like, we were talking about the fentanyl thing, about them, the government like kind of disrespecting parental rights over and giving kids fentanyl, right? And then my son says, "Well, what is it with the government? Do they have this dartboard of bad ideas?" And
yes, they do.
That was his quip, not mine. He says, "What do they have this dartboard of bad ideas?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess they do."
Well,
and then you said something was funny, so let's,
yeah. So that and this is where I decided to go and make a very colorful Wheel of Fortune board, basically that says "they F you hard," and this is where the of what this system, what we've talked about is it's like this dartboard of it's kind of like Wheel of Misfortune, and everything on the wheel is
Wheel of Misfortune.
It's an
Spin that
idea.
wheel, spin
It's
that
like,
wheel
let's
around.
spin this wheel to see what thing we're going to come up with to go and screw with people, you know? And this is
Yeah.
where we're at, is with this whole thing of they seem to be spinning this wheel of going, let's see what we can throw at the people to screw with screw with everybody.
I'll
And-
take clawbacks for 200.
Exactly.
Oh, you let it on 200 there.
I'd like
Alan.
to take homelessness for 5. You know,
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, a drug addiction for 1,000, Alex. Or Pat. Sorry,
Yeah.
wrong guy. But this is the thing,
Yeah.
is they have these. It's like, why can't you just go and say, look, my idea for UBI would be like, if half is paid by the province, half is paid by the feds, we're all going to be putting in, and we would be able to go and solve this problem of, wasting our tax dollars trying to audit people. If you want the money, take the money. You're just going to pay income tax on it. There's your solution. You're going to pay tax on it like everyone else.
Well,
right?
you spin that wheel, MJ, and then it lands on $50. Oh, there's PWD. They're going to have a $50 increase this year. Oh, your rent. Oh, hang on, wait a minute. You're paying $62 increase this year every month on your rent. Oh, I guess it comes.
Well,
out
this is what goes back to my point of the othering point of when Sophie Louis said I feel othered, and I made a point too in a previous podcast a while ago, is that if you were to equate disability discrimination to racial discrimination, it's equivalent to the idea that everybody on disability is colored blue, right? And the reason I say blue is because we all know the placard for the disability placards for the like for parking. It's
grass is blue, Neil.
It's blue, right? Or the grass is blue and the sky is green, right?
Yeah, right.
So as soon as you get enrolled in disability assistance, your face is blue. You're a blue person, right? And if you're a blue person that's enrolled in PW assistance, if you're a blue person, you deserve this, which isn't much. You deserve a clawback, or some
Take what's on your plate and go away. Yeah.
Some of you deserve a rent subsidy, but most of you don't.
Yeah.
The vast majority of you don't deserve a rent subsidy. The vast majority of you don't deserve affordable housing.
Yeah, but your cost of living's gone up. But yours did, right?
But it's okay if they're going to go and build these brand new 15-minute cities with these little pods that we'll have to go and live in and eat bugs and 3D printed meat. It's all going to be good. Don't worry. I mean,
and we won't have to worry about plastic straws because we'll be eating plastic anyway.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah. Exactly. And it breaks down. I mean,
My dad.
It's just all of this stuff that they're throwing at us. It's like they continue to keep throwing. It's like, it's like they're sitting there going and saying, here's another pile of crap to go around your feet. Here's another pile of crap to go around your feet. Now we're getting up to here, right? We're getting up to here with the crap they keep throwing at us. And this is where it's like we're starting to throw out ideas of, okay, what's a possible solution?
yeah, exactly.
Do we get organized and go political? Do we go and say, okay, we're going to start taking votes from your parties and get people that are disabled or support disabilities and support senior citizens to go and say enough is enough with your nonsense?
Exactly.
How far are they willing to push us?
I'm glad you
That's my
mentioned
question.
that. I mean, like seniors with disabilities. I mean, and it just drives me batty because I've talked to people in my neighborhood, and they asked me. One knows I do the podcast and said, well, has the federal government talked about people with disabilities as Canada disability benefit? I mean, for 65 years old, because I'm a senior, I mean, I need to have it. I go, no, the government said, no, it's not going to go to people who are 65 or older. Like, why? Is there a roadblock? Is it supposed to stop? I go, apparently. I said, but as you get older, you're going to get more disabilities. And I think the government has this completely set up deliberately that way, that no, they want to exclude out Canadians with disabilities who are seniors.
Well, and this is where they create all of these roadblocks, all these terms and conditions, all these requirements, and all these definitions of,
Mhm.
and all of these little things to go and basically beat you down.
Yep.
And this is what it's about, is to beat you down mentally, beat you down physically, and this is why they're offering made as, well, this is your, ta-da, we got the solution for you.
You're too exhausted to
There's
fight.
there's no dignity of trying to go and
Oh,
help
because
people live and experience life. You're
oh,
trapped
because
in
the
your
government
apartment.
feels that it's going to save the federal government on their health care. They did a stats on millions of dollars that it's going to save them on health care. Really, is so like a person's life is supposed to be paid to that. Like, no, I know it's wrong.
See, and this is the thing: is if with my idea of $4,000 a month, you'd be able to go and buy the quality food that you want, not have to go to the food bank and get meat that's spoiled and be sick for days.
Oh yeah, like
I was referencing to something I saw on Facebook, Neil, or something you said last week about being sick from getting some inferior products because you're disabled or you're poor or you're not good enough. It's like, no, this is, to me, this is where the current provincial systems violate, in my personal opinion, violate the Section 12 of the Constitution Act, where it's cruel and unusual treatment or punishment is what they're inflicting on the people out here.
It's state violence. Violence. Yeah.
It's exactly state sanctioned violence. And it's almost like they've actually declared war on their own citizens, which in of itself is actually a war crime. So, this is where, I question, what do we have to do to get their attention? We've tried everything. We've tried letter writing campaigns. We've tried going to the media. We've tried everything.
Yeah.
What are we left?
Exhausted all avenues, and that's the part that drives me crazy too, MJ, and Alan and Neil is government says, you have to prove your residency to your landlord in order to get your shelter portion. I mean, with the cost of rent and the cost of living so high, I know it drives Cassandra because completely bonkers every time I talk about this, because it makes no sense. And even the former minister who was in charge of the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction in BC even said, yes, that was something that he wanted to get rid of when he was minister, but he said that they wouldn't let him do it. The system wouldn't let him get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's bad. You know what I mean? Like, that's coming from a former minister, and I get it. Like, a lot of them, they can't talk about certain things because they sign an oath, right? So, yeah.
See, and this is where, this is where I've kind of gotten to this point where it's like, we have exhausted every avenue to try to get their attention, for them to listen to what, disabilities, seniors, better healthcare options, better transportation options. But no, they have to waste our tax dollars on pet projects, sending money to foreign nations or in provinces, going and paying for some nonsensical thing that serves no generalized purpose, right? I mean, it's like, in BC, we're probably about maybe 500,000 strong of people that are disabled, including senior citizens, And it could be up to 750,000.
Oh yeah, the number keeps going up. I mean, as every day goes by, every week goes by, every month and every year, people will get more disabilities as time goes on. We need to take care of our citizens and show them dignity and respect and give them autonomy so they can make decisions that are best based on what their needs are as an individual person. So when they want to go to a recreation center, because right now it's all based on household, right? So you want to go to a recreation center, maybe you want to keep yourself limber and do the best you can. Go on an elliptical trainer, or maybe strengthen, whatever you need to do. Maybe go for swimming if you can swim. But in order for me to get a pass, MJ, like I went there. Well, I got one, but it's based on your household income. So
again,
you don't qualify.
Right. So it's like, let's make this more and more difficult for us. I see you looking at the clock, Neil.
We're wrapping up. Yeah.
Okay.
I see, it begs the question is, do they really, if we have exhausted all of the avenues to get their governments to listen to us at federal and provincial, to get them to say, hey, we're going to do the right thing.
Mhm.
You know, we've gone through every avenue. We've tried every petition. We've tried everything that we can do. We've tried emails. We've had campaigns. We tried everything. Well, guess what? Maybe it's time for us to get a little more organized and take this to a political level, because
Yep.
it almost seems that the only way for them to pay attention is if they start losing votes from their own ballot boxes.
Well, there's a
Because
provincial election coming up in BC on October 19th at the latest. I mean, that's on paper unless it happens sooner. So I
Well,
want people
it's
to
a
get out
little
there.
short notice to get a new political party going, and that
Yeah,
organized. It takes at least 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And the idea is the only solution left is to solve problems and get the government out of people's lives as much as possible, so they can make those decisions financially for
Exactly.
themselves.
Hey,
You know,
well, yeah. I mean, to wrap everything up, like I want to first of all, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, watching our live podcast at BC versus Alberta. We didn't talk too much about Alberta, but we will. Maybe we can do another recap.
But
do you have-
next week we'll talk Ontario. We'll
Ontario, yeah, for
mostly
sure.
focus on Ontario next
Yeah,
week.
I will. I'll be. The only thing I want to bring up is that when I got applied to ODSP in the 90s, my dad was so disgusted, and I'll elaborate on this, on the policies of ODSP. As
Okay.
coming from an educated chairman of a college, how disgusted he was by the regulations and the amounts of stuff that we just looked at from Alberta. And he said he wanted to start a small business so that I didn't have to go through this kind of punitive behavior. It's just that the economy dollar tanked at the time I got on it again, and it wasn't feasible for him to mortgage the house to start a small business. But he was so disgusted that a human being could be exposed to the policies that Citizen Service. Anyway, I'll talk about that more.
I look forward to Alan. I look forward to you talking about that in on for Ontario, and it's just I'll basically pass the mic.
Maybe someone can make a note that I want to talk
I'll
about
pass
that.
it over to you in a second there, MG.
Okay.
It's just like overall, like I mean, all the provinces, the rates are so far. I mean, so far well below a livable income. And the government's deliberately done this. I mean, people are following along on the podcast going, well, how come you guys aren't talking about like Saskatchewan, Manitoba? I mean, you know, as an overview, the rates are well below a standard of living.
All across the country, it's bad.
All across. I mean,
Brent, you did send me a picture.
Yes.
And I want, since we're going to be talking about that briefly,
Yeah.
and we can close the show out with showing this picture
Sure.
of exactly what the rates are. Now
Yeah.
I'm going to go and zoom in for people to go and see, and I'm going to scroll down
Perfect.
through this so you can go and see.
That's
exactly
a good
what's going-
segue on that one. Thanks,
you know, so you
MG,
can
on
go
that
and
one.
see what's going on here. This, you know, and we'll go back to the smaller picture, and here we go. I mean, this is what's really going on with the rates across this nation, and how can you expect people to live on $754 a month? You know, in the middle of the northern, you know, Newfoundland and Labrador, you know, that's fairly cold up there. Nova Scotia gets brutally cold. You know, it costs $1,000 to, you know, for maybe 3 to 6 months of oil, because they still use oil over there. Same with Newfoundland. I mean, the level of insanity that they expect us to live on is
this amount in each province, MJ, drops if you are living with your parents and you're doing room and board. That drops by $400 per province.
I mean, all depends. I mean, I pay rent to my mom. I live with my mom, and it's all above board, and I give her the amount of rent. But when it comes to all of this, I mean, this looks like it's a little bit out of date for some of the numbers. But when you take a look at all,
they're all pretty close, though. We have to.
They're all pretty close. They're within 10% right now, folks. So when you take a look at all of these numbers, you have to question, how could a person go, I mean, afford to live? I mean, how much support do you actually get from the government to cover your essential needs above and beyond if you're disabled even further, or if you need a wheelchair or half a wheelchair? You know, You
I
know,
mean, you look at it again,
you
Jay,
know,
like you look at the Atlantic provinces, some of those rates, I mean, my gosh, they are so low, and they don't even have the persons with disabilities medically designated status. It's
no,
just
they don't.
regular income assistance, some of them, and it's terrible.
It is $697. How could they suggest that people could live on that in this day and
Yeah,
age?
you
You
can't.
know,
You
you know,
cannot,
so
no.
when it comes to all of these numbers, you have to go and question why they continue to do this and
Mhm.
why they continue to keep this perpetual system of poverty going, and how it's considered to be acceptable in 2024. That's
Yeah.
the real
What
questions that need to be asked. How is it considered to be acceptable in this day and age?
in our wealthy country, I mean, how can we keep these rates so suppressed down way below a livable income? And I don't even call it like a poverty level. I just call it like below a standard livable income. When our cost of living has gone up rates through the roof. I mean, I always go with the analogy of when I was a kid, and I mean, a teenager. I mean, really, like I could go to the store and I could buy a chocolate bar, a bag of chips, and I didn't buy a lot of stuff like that because I didn't want to waste my money on stuff like that. But once a month, I'd go and treat myself to a bag of chips, MJ and Ellen and you know,
Yeah.
okay, and a bottle of pop, and it's a small little 500 milliliter, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and a chocolate bar, and no tax,
Please,
no tax, you guys, no
Are you gonna bring us
tax.
down?
Only thing was
Uh,
a 5% deposit. That was it, $1.05. Here's a dollar bill, and yes, it was a dollar bill, right?
I would
No
like
I
to
tax.
remember
know
those days.
how. I'd like to know how renting a room went from 300 a month pre 2000 to being almost $1,000, if not more now. And
Oh, it's more.
trying to rent a room,
It's more than
just
that furnished
try,
room
It's more than
now.
that, Ellen.
yeah. Well, I mean, I looked in Kingston and it said one bedroom, and I thought, well, that's not bad. That's $1,099. No, it was a bedroom with its own bathroom in a house of 4 rooms.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Like it was
oh,
ridiculous.
I know.
Like that would literally leave me 250 to live on before food,
The
This
before
amount,
is
Sabo.
yeah, the
is
amount
where
has gone up right through the roof.
this is where, in order to solve these problems, we're going to have to face a lot of uncomfortable truths. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, the bureaucracy that exists within these provincial programs has become part of the problem to
Yep.
solving the problem. And that's just the way it is. I mean, when you're telling me that a minister that has disability under his purview wanted to get rid of the rental portion and combine it together, but they wouldn't let him,
Yeah,
then there's something seriously wrong and rotten within the system.
there was a lot
something
of
wrong.
changes, MG, that the minister wanted to do. There was one thing that he did say they wanted him to sign, but he couldn't talk about it. I know you and I, we tried to poke and prod him on that, but he says I can't talk about
I
that.
tell you, if ever he writes a book, I'll be the first in line.
Well, me too, and I'll get to sign it too.
for an autograph. Yeah.
I mean,
I'll
there's
be
a lot
first
of
in line.
changes that I think a lot of the ministers, regardless of the political stripe, political party, far left, far right, center, I think there's a lot of them that they want to see a lot of positive changes happen in the country, but for some reason, they just it can't happen. Like I don't know why.
It's a larger
I think-
discussion.
I think so.
Brent, it's a
Yes.
larger discussion
Yeah.
that has to be had. And this is why, it makes me wonder how, do we have to go and create our own political party to get heard? Because it seems like they're not willing to
I think
listen
so.
in this system.
Yeah.
We've tried everything. We've
Yeah.
done everything.
Exhausted all avenues.
Well,
So,
here is my mic drop: is that I don't want to live in a province or a country where truth doesn't matter, where pink unicorns can run amok, and where widowers and orphans are stolen from. And all of those things are happening right now, and it's legislated as it's fine. And you talk to the human rights tribunals, and they're like, well, it's okay if it's a pink unicorn, it's fine.
Well, that's exactly
or
it.
like the truth of something doesn't matter. Like the truth of a pension doesn't matter. The fact that the pension is supposed to be protected, it's supposed to be a guaranteed income. If something really shitty happens, like your wife dies, it's supposed to be a guaranteed income for something really shitty. And yet the government says, oh, well, so what? You know,
But
we'll
Neil,
just claw it off.
it used to be pensions back in the early 90s. Disability, until it was changed.
And thanks to Mike Harcourt, he gets his pension, but everybody else now gets theirs clawed back, and it started with him. And
this is,
you know,
so this is where we have had so many people fighting for disability rights, fighting for disability benefits, fighting for disabled people directly, working with in the community throughout the years, trying to go and solve the problems. So my question is what else do we do? Because if we've done everything, we're starting to run out of all the options that we can do. So do we have to play your game? Because this time, if we play your game, we're coming with both barrels and we're ready to play ball. We are willing to go and strike out home runs, because guess what? All of these things that we talk about on this program will resonate across this nation for every single person that is disabled, and every single senior citizen, and every person that has a relative that is disabled or has to care for a disabled relative, or any way otherwise. This will resonate, because people are truly tired of being bombarded at every turn with nonsensical idiocy that's created, legislated, regulated, or otherwise.
And then MJ, you can steal a line from a movie, and you can say, "You can't handle the truth."
The movie that I would be quoting for is "I'm Mad as Hell." And
that's true too. Yeah.
Because I think that's where we need to start going, is being mad as hell, not willing to take it, and doing something about it.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good hashtag.
Within the confines of the law, I should say. For clarification, is the confines of the law. I don't want anyone to get misconstrued with what I'm saying.
Well, when Paul Doroshenko and he was on the show, and then we had now I'm having a brain fart now. Who was
that?
Oh yeah. When she was on the show and Paul was on the show, I wanted to say, like, when I was like 12 or 13, like, I loved watching the old reruns of Perry Mason, right?
Oh,
and,
right. Yeah.
And the reason why is because, the bad guy was always caught and the good guys always won. And it's like, I want to live in a world like that. And I mean, maybe that's idealistic, but I want to live in that world where telling the truth matters. And, and if, that,
and you're not discriminated against.
You're not discriminated against. And there's something called righteousness, like righteous policy. If something is right, then this is what you deserve. And if something is wrong, then you deserve this. It's not. But right now we're living in a topsy-turvy world where, it does, like, righteousness doesn't matter, truth doesn't matter. It's like, well, just we'll throw it in a blender and, like, drink up.
Well, exactly.
I always hear
throw the wall and see what sticks.
If you have mine, right? And it's like, that's or there's more to do. There's always more to do. That's like an excuse of kicking the can down the road. You know what? That all those lines that are used by government have more to do. It's just a narrative, right? That they spin out, and like people's lives don't get put on
social
hold.
disease.
Well, the thing is, people's lives don't get put on hold, though. I mean, they like.
But this is where I always, I was just saying is, what do we have to do? Because we've done it all.
Exactly.
And you know what? You don't want to listen. You don't want to talk to us. Okay, maybe it's a political party. Because guess what? That's about 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million votes.
At least,
right there, of people that know somebody that's stable.
And the voter turnout would be way higher.
Well, exactly. I guarantee you that they would turn out and they would vote for a party that's offering them, to help them get out from underneath the idiocy that's been created by the other parties.
So here's a challenge I'm going to throw out there to all the political parties that are watching this right now. If you want to, and it's like, show us that you actually mean business and that you're going to give every PWD in Canada, whatever province they're in, a livable income, effective immediately.
Well, we should have the option.
And while they're at it, why don't they start writing some policy within the act that protects autonomy, that protects marriage equity, that protects freedom of movement. Yep. All of that stuff is violated right now. There's none of that stuff in the act right now.
Yeah, let's modernize these things. Let's take away all clawbacks. All clawbacks need to end effective immediately. All income is anything that's exempt. So if you need to make money, however it is, and there's no clawbacks.
Yeah,
I mean, allow people movement of the country. I mean, you're disabled, and it doesn't matter what province you go to. You shouldn't have to reapply at another province. Oh, I'm still disabled. Can I apply in your province? Oh, you got to wait 3 months to be a resident here. Really? No, you don't.
And this is where UABI solves that problem.
Yep.
It's allowing you the freedom to move from one part of the country to the other. And if you want to go and live in an RV, you could do that too.
Or a tiny house.
Because you look at senior citizens right now, MJ, like if they want to go and live in another province, they just go.
Exactly. Yeah. They have freedom of movement.
Yeah.
But this is where they've created this system.
And with PWD, it's like, is there an outstanding warrant for your arrest?
Right, exactly.
Declare that on your form.
Yeah, my gosh, that's so archaic. Yeah. Like, that shouldn't even be on there in the first place.
Cheats, deadbeats, and varmints.
Yeah,
cheats, deadbeats, and varmints is still alive and well 30 years after Harcourt said it. And this was the whole point of us sharing this whole thing today.
Yeah.
Is that 30 years ago, Mike Harcourt said cheats, that everybody on welfare is a cheat, varmint, and a deadbeat. And that sentiment is still around today, 30 years later, that everybody on disability is a cheat, deadbeat, and a varmint.
And that's what Doug Ford's view is. And that's what Daniel Smith's view is.
Well, I don't know I don't know if that's Daniel Smith's view. I mean, that's, but we do know that's kind of where Doug Ford sits. I mean, the problem we have here is we have these divisive political ideologies that are designed to keep us fighting with one another instead of actually solving real problems, right? They pick all these wedge issues and then they go and take a piece of that little wedge issue and say, all of these groups over here are going to take this and the other group over here doesn't get this wedge issue, so they can be the anti-group. And this is what happens is, instead of going and actually working for the people as a whole, they end up creating these splinters. So they're working for this group, this group, this group, this group, this group, this group, and all of these groups over here, but not everybody as a whole. And this is what we truly do need in a system that's willing to solve the problems, and maybe a political party even that's willing to solve the problems, because nobody seems to want to go and fix the problems that have been created. They just want to punch it down the road and say, we'll get to it. And this is the theme of what we've had for 30 years in BC with disability, 30 plus years now. This is what we've had the theme of around the nation of, we'll get to it. It's, oh, well, the other party started this, but yet you see the government's going, they passed the buck on some things, but then they carry the torch on other things.
Yes.
Right. And this is the game that is played. And as I like to say, you don't know how which party is going to be the party to give you the hug, to give you the kiss, or the one that's going to knock you down and punch you down. But because they like to play this game, they switch it up every so often to keep you confused.
What I want to see going forward, to kind of to conclude our segment for today, is when I mentioned there's an election coming up in British Columbia, October. I think it's October 21st, I think it is, or somewhere around there. Anyway,
I think so.
It's around there. So this year. So I want to see which political party is going to talk about not just talk. I want to see actually mention people with disabilities. what are you going to do? Are you going to raise our income? And I want to see you raising our income to a livable income. And I want you to tie it to inflation. I want you to get rid of this rent two-tiered system, support versus rent. Get rid of it, right? Get rid of that. I want you to show some action that you actually mean business rather than just saying, well, and then they get into power. And then they say, oh, they blame the other government, and each government blames.
Well, in 2017, they promised to end all clawbacks. That was the big
too.
That was the big and bring back the bus pass. They were like, two things: we'll bring back the bus pass, and we'll end all clawbacks. And
right,
and you know, 7 years later, we're still waiting for both.
Well, you know, I just want to have British Columbians, I mean, to be able to live with dignity and respect and have autonomy in their province and also across this whole country, because our next segment that we'll be talking about next week will be BC versus Ontario. And I'm really looking forward to that too. I know we could dive into so much more, everyone. And, you know, I want to thank everyone.
Oh, and we should say, just before we go to, sorry, I keep interrupting you, Brent, sorry. But we should say too, so next week on Monday is going to be, we're going to be talking about Ontario and ODSP, but on the Friday, it's going to be your 100th episode of the new relaunch. You did 100 episodes on Twitter Spaces, but this will be coming up. It'll be 100 episodes on the new relaunch on YouTube. 100 episodes of PWDLS. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah,
Awesome.
really looking forward to that. And I want to remind anyone with disabilities across Canada, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, reach out to Neil or myself. We'll be more than happy to get you on. It can either be a live session where people can send in their comments to you while you're live.
Speaking of, we haven't even looked at the live stream this entire show to go and see if there's been any comments made.
Well, yeah, I've been following it. There was a few comments, and then it kind of went silent. So either they're engrossed in our conversation, and then nobody's typing anything.
Yeah,
or they all
disappeared.
disappeared.
I'm not dealing with this.
So one or the other. But yeah, it was active for the first little bit, then it's gone quiet. So
yeah,
okay.
I like to believe that they're so engrossed in our conversation that they're not typing anything.
Anyone wants to tune in and just be a guest on the show. I mean, I want to hear your stories. I want to what your ideas. What do you want to see the government do in your life to make your life better than financially better, because they do have a legal responsibility to take care of their citizens, right, regardless on who you are. I want people to understand that we live in a wealthy nation, right? We live in such a wealthy nation. We can take care of our citizens. If they can hand out over $50 billion a year to overseas to all these other corporations, they can damn well take care of their citizens. They gave they gave all the big banks $750 billion liquidity. Yeah, not million, folks, billion, right? So
I just got a couple of comments from the chat. Two people, Rosemary and Shane. They're saying we're listening. We're listening. So they're listening.
Awesome.
Good. I've had a couple of people who have reached out to me recently. They want to come on as a guest. So I'm just waiting for to arrange the date on that. Neil, just FYI. So and Neil already knows kind of one of them anyway. But I'm just waiting. So if you want to be a guest, like I say, we can do it live. We can do it pre-recorded if you feel that more comfortable, or you don't want to have comments from people saying your comments. We can do it either way. So yeah, definitely. If you don't want to be your video to be shown, and you can put just a picture up, and you can just have audio. There's lots of options to choose from if you're camera shy. If you're not camera shy, then hey, just wing it, just like I do. Just wing it. I basically make it a very good environment, comfortable environment to talk about.
Oh, we've got Minnie just showed up now. She says,
"Hey."
Minnie. So,
hey.
So yeah, for Minnie, again, we'll repeat that she'll be on next week, and we're basically going to turn the mic over to her and to Alan and
Dan, you disappeared early in the program.
And Dan, Dan, hopefully he had some technical issues with his phone. So,
Oh, okay.
but he was in chat earlier. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it'll be Minnie and Ellen and Dan will all focus on the Ontario side of things for ODSP. So that'll be good. We have somebody in chat saying, Shane said, I'm wondering what strings will be attached to the new funding. So I guess they're talking about the CDB. Any strings attached to that?
For right now, Shane, the latest I've heard is members of Parliament. And I'm not pointing fingers, but MP Mike Maurice has been very, 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 very vocal. Okay, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that the DTC right now is as a playing card, right? Of who's going to get that Canada Disability Benefit or not. Now, Mike Maurice had one of the pillars that he had got passed in the development in the committee stage was that the DTC was not supposed to be there as a qualification to get the Canada Disability Benefit. Now, for some reason, he's worried that they're going to use that as a block, as a stepping stone to get the Canada Disability Benefit. Now, in my view, it does not. It needs to go to every single person because that's what they agreed upon. He said in their committee stage, they agreed. And now, if they're going to go back, that's like promising, like which they did. They promised to get the Canada Disability Benefit, as we all know. It's zero right now. Zero. It's empty. It's a shell. It's like when I talk about my spaghetti episode. Well, I boiled the water. I threw the noodles in. What else you want me to do? You didn't make the spaghetti. Hey, Ellen. Well, where's all the ingredients, Ellen?
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. But people will probably follow it and say, "Yeah, I get it, Brent. I get it." But the point, basically, the point is that with the development of that Canada Disability Benefit, it's looking like 2026.
It's a carrot.
It's a carrot stick, and it's like vote for me.
The question is,
best interest, and I'm going to get this going.
The question to me is, Brent, is if the Canadian Disability Benefit is indeed a carrot, what's the stick? Because behind every carrot is a stick.
Yeah, there is a stick.
That.
And it's the stick is basically the stick is kind of behind us, saying vote for us.
That's what I'm saying. We don't.
Yeah.
See, we don't know what the agenda of the stick is. Is this agenda agenda agreed in power? Is the agenda votes?
It's stringing along. It's just stringing along.
The idea here is we're going to promise you the world, and then we'll get to it after the next election. We're going to promise you the world, and then we're get to it after the next election.
That's
what we're going to. But we're going to promise you the world, folks. But we just can't get to it this election. Right?
Yeah.
But next time.
But
we
MJ,
promise.
There's more to do, MJ. I mean, I promise.
So,
I will get it
Rosemary's saying it'd be nice if they did it retroactive.
Yeah, the unicorn will do it though. Don't worry.
Then this is where UABI can be done in exactly 3 months from the time a government gets into office and gets it approved in government and gets it rolled out. It could be done within 3 months to 6 months maximum.
I agree about the comment in the chat is yes, it needs to be retroactive back, and there is a petition out there right now. Is actually exactly what you said.
Yeah, the latest one. I forget the number. I forget the number on that one.
4777, I believe it is.
I think so. There's a lot of sevens in it. I know.
I'll put it onto Twitter. I will get a hold of it and I'll pump it out there. I really encourage people to sign the petition. I know that these petitions are probably, I mean, who knows? They may not go anywhere, but at least we got to try with it. In the meantime, I really also encourage people to contact your local MLA, your local MP, MPP, wherever you are in the country, whoever your representative is, let them know. I want this Canada Disability Benefit now. Not.
I want to add to that, Brent.
Already right from day one, right? Serve out there. Out there, and retroactive.
I want to add to that. I think we need to start asking our loved ones, people that are actually taxpayers, to empathize with our situation. To say, "Hey, mom, dad, uncle, aunt,
Yeah.
sister, cousin, whatever, best
Your
friend.
neighbors, your
Can you-
neighbors, your
Can,
friends.
can you just call your MPP and say, if the disability benefit isn't put into action, you will not get my vote? Because I guarantee enough taxpayers do that. And you
Bingo.
See, the
I love
problem
it. Love
is,
it, Emma. That's great. That's brilliant.
the only time that change can happen in this country, and because we have had multiple killer cases about this, the only time it happens is at the ballot box. In
Yep.
between then, I showed that little picture where it shows that they are not accountable to us whatsoever and only accountable to themselves.
Yeah.
This is the only time that we truly have the balance of power, is at the ballot box, and that's the only place in this country that truly makes a difference. Right?
Absolutely.
And this is why I honestly believe that the only option left is for us to go and conglomerate as disabled people and supporters of disabled people and make our own party to go and push our agenda. 1 million votes divided up over the nation might not cost anything, but it will change the balance of power. And it will make these parties go and realize that the people are moving away from the agendas that they're selling.
I love it. I love that, MJ, and that's actually a good way to end the segment. That is awesome, and I think that's what we got to do going forward. We're going to make sure the politicians understand we mean business. If you're not going to do business, we'll change the system. I want to thank everyone for tuning in today and my panel. This has been an awesome segment. I hope that people weren't pissed off with the segment. It wasn't all about throwing all the politicians under the bus. It's about holding them accountable.
Yeah.
Because right now they're elected officials. They're protected under the legislation, right? But you're going to become disabled sometime in your life, either a visible disability, other some kind of impairment. And yes, it will affect your health, your well-being, but financially you're
I've
going
been
to be
saying that a lot
right?
on Facebook lately.
Yeah, but anyway, I
Anyways.
want to thank you for today's segment too. Actually, everyone on the podcast. I know that.
And Dan, we're sorry for
And
your
Dan,
technical
technical
foibles, but
difficulties.
yeah.
And then all the comments into our comment section. I really encourage everyone to keep tuning into our shows. You want to be a guest? Let us know. Reach out to Neil. Reach out to myself. Yeah, definitely, and we'll get you scheduled in. Next week's week is a little bit shorter. Got a few things on the go, but definitely Monday. That's our BC versus Ontario segment.
We have a show tomorrow.
And we do have a show tomorrow too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a guest coming on tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely.
I'll give a hint. Dunder Mifflin.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
Dunder Mifflin.
It's been one hell of a show today, folks.
Yeah, but it was a good show today. Yeah,
it was a really good show, and it's always very informative. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and stay tuned to our next show and our next part 2, which will be next Monday. But the show is tomorrow. You want to be a guest? Reach out, and we'll get you all set up. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.